It's time for your Week 3 Blue Rush preview show. We're breaking down the 0-2 Giants heading out to the Midwest and what I guess should be a pretty even matchup against the 1-1 Cleveland Browns. Look, if you're watching this, you already know what's at stake for the Giants. DraftKings has them as the underdogs at plus 6.5 points. And we all know they cannot start the season off at 0-3, especially coming off of that Commanders loss. So let's bring in our Blue Rush OG. He writes, you read, and the world immediately becomes a better place. He's our Giants beat writer for the Post, Paul Schwartz. Paul, what's going on, baby? In today's episode, Paul's going to give you his practice reports, and he's got an eye out on the Andrew Thomas versus Myles Garrett matchup. Can't wait to hear what he thinks about that. And for Know Your Enemy, we've got Cleveland.com Browns reporter Ashley Bastock on here with us, and we're going to get super fancy today, Paul. We're going to break down what the next-gen stats say about the matchup. What's going on, man? 0-3 is not a good place to be, Paul. Let's just start off with that.
Well, they're not there. They're not there, and, you said they can't start 0-3. They can. They mustn't. I wrote in a column for Thursday's paper in the New York Post that, look, I dragged them out, but I said, look, I'm dragging out the stats. If you're 0-3, one team has made the playoffs, the 78, what was it? The 2018 Texans, and that's, history says it can't be done because that's not the issue right now. Yeah. The issue, nobody said going into the season, the Giants are a playoff team. They're going to make the playoffs. It's not about that. It's about playing week to week and being relevant and being in the conversation. At 0-2, you're kind of like, after that Commanders game. At 0-3, you're like, check back with me when you win a couple of games. So that's the thing. It's not about 0-3. The odds go astronomically down if you don't make the playoffs. At 0-3, facing a short week and then playing the Cowboys, do you want those Giant fans selling their tickets off in droves and Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb jerseys filling the lower bowl of that stadium on Thursday night? That's ahead of ourselves. So it's here now for the Giants. This is a come to the Lord moment here as far as football, and figure out a way to win a game or else it just ain't good.
Yeah, if you don't want to hear how about them Cowboys, you cannot allow Cleveland to be like, how about those Browns? Let's start this thing off with your injury report and a kicker update. We're filming this Thursday morning. What can you tell us about who's injured, who may play, and what are they doing with the kicker situation?
Yeah, it looks like they're pretty healthy. Nick McLeod has a knee issue. He didn't practice on Wednesday. I would expect him not to play. I'm fairly certain he won't play, so it'll be a lot of Cordell Flott, Drew Phillips in the slot. Drew Phillips, we'll maybe talk about him later. He is, one of the – if you have 5 bright spots for the Giants at an 0-2 start, Drew Phillips is one of them. He's one of the top 5. Darius Musow is probably going to be okay. He practiced on Wednesday. So they're pretty healthy. And, I got a chance to look, the new kicker, last week, we talked about it ad nauseum about Graham Gano and a sore groin, and he gets hurt running down the field, sprinting. So they have Greg Joseph as their new kicker. He ruined the job. I went up to him in the locker room on Wednesday and said, oh, yeah, so when you walked in the building, the people come up to you and say, oh, you ruined my Christmas 2 years ago. He said, yeah, some of them did, in a good-hearted, good-natured way, because he kicked a 62-yard field goal to beat the Giants on Christmas Eve day, I guess it was. That's something people remember. No hard feelings. They brought him in. He's a proven kicker. He was on the Lions practice squad. He told me, how to get up. He doesn't have a kids, but he does have a wife. And bang, the Giants did a good job. All of a sudden, the next day he's at the Giants. He's practicing. And, he knows Graham Gano because everyone knows Graham Gano. How's this for a little bit of trivia? As far as he went to the same high school in Florida and college, Florida Atlantic, as Devin Motor Singletary. So, that's like, really? High school and college? He said, when I went to college, I kind of, try to, keep a look at Motor and kind of like, look out after him. Motor is such a little guy. You always want to keep out and look after him. And he said he didn't really need my help. He was terrific there. So that's a friendly face. That helps. It does help in the building. But he did say, and I asked him, and he agreed, look, until you're welcomed in, right? You're welcomed in, but look, it's the kicker. 56 players aren't meeting and greeting the kicker. A few guys are, the long snapper, Jamie Gillen, the punter. You have your little small circle with the special teams coordinator, and that's about it. And some guys go over and say hello to him. But you kick a big field goal in Cleveland, you're going to have a lot of attaboys and patting your back from a lot of the players on the team. So that's when you know. And look, he's going to be the kicker for the foreseeable future unless he really lays an egg, because Graham Gano's on IR. He has to miss at least the next 4 games.
Usually, you don't welcome a kicker with open arms, but after what happened last week, Paul, they're coming in like they're come here, give me one, give me a hug, and hopefully he can kick them to their first win. You mentioned Drew Phillips and Musau, and there's the 2 rookies who have been absolutely great on this defense this year. And I don't want to say great, really good on this defense this year. Let's start off by talking about the defense, Paul. What storylines, what do you got for us? Let's get these people something new to talk about at work.
Look, what's bizarre, Brandon, is that officially, as far as stats, right? We always go to stats. Officially, I think this is correct, right? The Commanders were 0 for 6 in the red zone. Right? 0 for 6 in the red zone. That is terrific. Boy, that is great red zone defense. No, sir. Right? There were 6 field goals there. There was a 7th field goal. That came just on outside the red zone. It was a 45-yard field goal. I'm not giving it. I know we disagreed last time we met on these broadcasts about the quality of the defensive work. Nope, 7 field goals isn't cutting it. Letting a team have the ball for 38 minutes isn't cutting it. So And the defensive players, I think, took my stake in this. Here's what Dexter Lawrence said about that defensive performance. 0 for 6 in the red zone, right? Personally, I'm pissed because I hate losing with a passion. I hate that hard losing. I said, I take that. He said, I take that hard. I really don't like it. For me, it's just something I'm not going to keep accepting. Okay, so he was really, really upset about it. And I thought Bobby Okereke took a big leadership step after that game and said, I did not do my job. Look, this is a veteran, right? He's not a rookie. He said, I was trying to do too much. I was trying to fill in. If I saw something that I didn't like, I went over there, and that causes problems. That caused a lot of the big plays. So he said, look, I have to do my job. I have to, my eyes have to be where my eyes have to be, and I can't worry about, I see something wrong here. I see something wrong here. I have to do my job, because if I do my job, some of those big plays don't happen. And I asked Micah McFadden about that, because that's another inside linebacker, right? Yep. And he said that it really is that they talked about it on if one guy doesn't make a play is a problem. And he said, there was a draw play where he was not in the right space and that hurt him. He said there was another one where there was a blitz and he kind of was not where he needed to be, and he wasn't in his gap, and it was a long run. So these defensive players know. Look, it's a new defense, right? It's some new guys, but it's a new scheme under Shane Bowen, and it just tells me that they're not quite there yet mentally with, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. And, we hear that often on defenses that, look, they made some good plays, right? That led to only field goals, but it wasn't enough good plays. Yeah. And third down, 7 for 14 is an unacceptable amount of third down conversions, which kept the ball out of their hands. Look, we both agreed the Giants on offense did some good things against a fairly crappy defense. Let's say, but they scored 3 touchdowns, and maybe would have another one if Devin Singletary doesn't fumble, and maybe would have had another one if Malik Nabers, who had a terrific game, didn't have a drop. So the offense was fine. They just weren't on the field enough. So the defense also has to help their guys out there. You know what I mean? And so the defense has to be better. There's no question about it. They have to be better.
Yeah, it's the preseason stage or the honeymoon stage when it comes to Shane Bowen and his defense. It's over now. You've had 2 games. You've had 1 game where you play again. We go back and forth on how the defense played against the Commanders. Bobby Okereke takes accountability. I think they know. And what Coach Coughlin used to always say back in the day is know and know you know. Now you've had ample amount of time to know and know this Shane Bowen system. And a lot of people were talking about what the difference was going to be when it came to how are they going to create some sort of pressure. Shane Bowen doesn't blitz the way that Wink Martindale does, but I got some next-gen stats to where it says the Giants have generated the 10th highest pressure rate in the league this season at 35.5%. Dexter Lawrence with 8 pressures, Brian Burns with 7, and Kayvon with 6, and they lead the team. Now, here's something to think about. The Giants' defense has allowed opposing passers to complete all 14 attempts for a league-high 221 yards and 2 touchdowns when blitzing through the first 2 weeks. So it's like you just came off a defensive coordinator that wanted to blitz. Now when you do blitz, you don't get there. So it's a thing where it's like Shane Bowen each week, what's this identity going to be for this Giants defense? And this is where they're going to have to find it and play above the X's and O's, because you're playing against a Deshaun Watson who we don't know if he has his juice back yet, and a Browns offensive line, Paul, that is looking like a Giants offensive line from years past, not the new offensive line. So I would say this is a great opportunity for Shane Bowen and the Giants defense to take a step against this Cleveland Browns offense led by Kevin Stefanski, but you cannot let Deshaun Watson get his juice back this game, Paul.
Well, and look, these guys are going to look at the film. What did Deshaun Watson see studying the Giants? Okay, let's see week 1. Sam Darnold, 12 from 12 out of the chute, right? They let him get in a comfort zone, right? On the road, they let him get in a comfort zone. What did he see last week? Jaden Daniels, what was he, 10 for his first 10?
Yep.
A rookie quarterback, right, in his second NFL start. What happens? They let him get in his comfort zone. So I'm sure Deshaun Watson is looking at that and saying, I want some of that, right? You know what I mean? There's nothing, little short completion, first down, pick up the first down. You know, I'm not frazzled. I'm comfortable. I mean, you can get to Deshaun Watson. He has a history of taking sacks. There's no question about it. But the Giants have shown in these first 2 games that you can sit on a rocking chair in the first quarter of these games, you know, in the first half of these games. Just sit there and make your reads, make your throws, and they're not going to stop you. The Browns, their 2 starting tackles, Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin, have not played that this year because of knee injuries. They both had knee injuries that knocked them out last year. I think Conklin probably will play. I think Wills probably won't play. So, It's imperative on the Giants here. Shane Bowen said it last week. He said, when you put your resources in a certain place, it is not unfair to expect that place with those resources to have the highest expectations. Burns, $141 million. Kayvon, 5th pick in the draft. It is not unfair for the Giants to expect those guys to wreak havoc. Dexter Lawrence gets paid big bucks, and he's doing it. Those 2 guys, I know what Next Gen Stats said about pressures. I get it, okay? I mean, I'm not 100% sure their pressures and my pressures would be identical, but I get it. I know really. It's not a sack. It's a, just like, as a receiver, right? How did you grade out? Okay, you had 3 drops, but the coaches graded you. They liked the routes. You won your route. Okay, that's fine. That's all important stuff. And sacks are there in black and white. You have a sack, they can't take it away from you. But I don't think, and I think you would agree with me, that through the first 2 games, you would sit there and say, Kayvon and Burns, no problem. They're doing their thing. You don't pay Burns to get pressures. You pay him to get to the quarterback, knock the ball out of his darn hand, and have someone pick it up. You know what I mean? Or get in the quarterback's face and have someone hit his hand, or he misreads it and the ball's up in the air and one of his defensive backs picks it up for an interception. That's what needs to happen here. Yep. Causing turnovers, there needs to be havoc. This team is on the margins, and they can't just sit back and say, okay, we'll play it nice and easy. You kick your field goals and we'll score some points and win a game. They need more than that.
Yeah, This one's on Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence. Like, this game has to be on them. First and foremost, they got to stop the run. The Giants' defensive line has to stop the run. Otherwise, you're not even, as we've seen, you're not going to put that opposing quarterback or that offense in any sort of a position to where they have to sling it. They have to throw the rock. Giants' run defense, rush plays, they've got 61. They're giving up 5.3 yards a rush, Paul. Can't have that. absolutely can't have that. And when we talk about could this be a Deshaun Watson get back or I'm back game, this has to be a I'm back or this is who we are, the big three type game for this Giants defense. You mentioned the 2 tackles being out, but in these 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks, the Browns' offensive line has allowed pressure on 40.4% of the dropbacks, this 5th highest. And this is all next-gen stats. All 5 starters have allowed multiple pressures in consecutive games, and that's despite facing a below-league average blitz rate of 23.4. Don't worry about the blitz rate. Giants don't blitz that much, and I don't think they're going to after the blitz rate, them not getting there and quarterbacks being 100% in terms of completion percentage against the blitz. Deshaun Watson has been sacked 8 times. That's 4th most amongst NFL quarterbacks. You got to get there. Like you said, when it comes to the pressures and hurries, it sounds good. It's cute. And like you said, a coach isn't going to, if a drop is a drop, you know, it's not he almost caught it. So we're going to put an asterisk by it. No, you either catch it or you don't. You either get there and get the sack or you don't. And it's all on the Giants defense, pass rush, but it starts with the run game. You have to stop the run. And it goes back to what you said about Bobby Okereke and the linebackers being where they need to be. Sound defense to show that, again, when you're in the right gap, you may not make a play when you grade out, Paul, but when you grade out and you're watching tape, you could be upset like, oh, I'm in the gap. I didn't make the play. I didn't make the tackle. But that shows you know and you know you know. You know the X's and O's and the Y's of the defense. You're in that spot to free up another guy, and then you just got to get there. If someone has to make a play outside of that. Let's flip it. Talk about this Giants offense. All eyes. There's 2 matchups I guess everyone's got all eyes on. Denzel Ward versus Malik Nabers. But Paul, you ready to see Myles Garrett versus Andrew Thomas. That is a tough straw to draw for Andrew Thomas. You think he can hold up against Myles Garrett?
Left tackle, franchise left tackles, every straw is tough. That's the way it works, man. You know, just like shut down corners, right? You know, this week it's this guy, which week it's this guy. This is the way. Now, Myles Garrett might be the toughest straw of them all, yes. But remember the scene in Miracle, you know, with the 1980 Olympic champions, right? When Herb Brooks is talking about his great speech, which people have to memory about. He's given the speech about why he thinks they can beat the Russians, and he says, "And we go in there and shut them down because we can." And the camera pans to Jim Craig, the goalie, right? And everyone, he didn't say it, but he said, okay, that's understood. We can shut them down because we have a great goalie. It's the same thing with the Giants now. Myles Garrett, oh my gosh, he's a headache. I mean, the guy looks like a freak. He looks like a professional wrestler. One of these guys that, or somebody that, Rocky VII is going to put up to box 800-year-old Sylvester Stallone or Creed or something. He just looks He looks different. He just looks different than other pass rushers. He does. He looks like he was built in a factory. And but that's why they have Andrew Thomas and paid him, because he can shut him down. Now, every play, one-on-one, no. But he's their stud. He's their stopper. So I think Andrew Thomas is confident. He's been playing terrific already. He's got some stability next to him in John Runyon, so they can help a little bit. And as we've mentioned, and as we'll, I guess, mention even after this, Giants keep tight ends into block a lot, so you can do that too. You can put Chris Manhertz over there, right? He's a 260-pound man. He can block also and help. So you do need extra help, but you can feel good about Andrew Thomas. He's terrific. His pass block win rate is, maybe tops in the league right now. So, look, this is why you have him. The Giants don't have a lot of these guys who are answers, not questions. Andrew Thomas is an answer.
Yeah, this entire Giants offensive line has gotten better from week 1 to week 2. You mentioned being able to keep a tight end in. We were talking about Monday when we were talking to you. We were talking about how Theo Johnson, the 4th-round tight end, doesn't have a catch on the year. I'm okay with keeping that tight end in as you figure it out. This is a new offensive line. I love the way that they got the vets on the offensive line, so they're going to pick it up, figure it out faster. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to protect the money. You got to let Daniel Jones have some time and some confidence because he's throwing to Malik Nabers. And this is going to be the matchup of the year. And not just Malik Nabers versus Denzel Ward. I think for this is the week we see the entire Giants receiving core all have a catch. I'm talking Darius Slayton, Nabers, Jalen Hyatt, and Wan'Dale Robinson. They all have to have multiple catches this game because when you talk about going up against a Jim Schwartz defense, he's going to play man on the outside. He is going to rush his lot of $1 million pass rushers that he has, and he is going to have those corners up in your face, and you're going to have to beat us. Beat us is what they're going to say. And as a receiving core, you love that type of challenge, Paul. But if you're Jalen Hyatt, if you're Wan'Dale, you only got a couple balls last game. If you're Darius Slayton, you only touched the rock a couple times. You're sitting here, you're in receiver coaches Mike Grohl's ear. You're in Kafka's ear. You're in Dable's ear. Let me cook. Let me cook. We can't force feed Malik Nabers. I understand that he is, I guess we can say generational. The boy can play. The boy can ball. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to spread the ball around because after Denzel Ward, Cleveland's defense, that secondary gives it up. So they're going to have to spread the ball around this game, Paul. And that's something I am definitely keeping my eye on.
Yeah, look, I wrote that the other day in the Post, and I got a lot of comments like, you got to be kidding. The Giants have so many problems, and you're complaining about Malik Nabers getting too many targets. One person said, I'd throw to him 30 times if I could. I get it. Look, it's not number one. It's not, I didn't come out of the Commanders game and say, the problem with this game is they threw to Nabers too much. No, of course not. I mean, if they threw to him 4 times, my first thing would have been, what the heck are they doing? They drafted him, now they're not throwing the ball to him. Yep. So that's not the issue. But the issue is, you can't, this is not Will Chamberlain in the 60s, just give it to him and he'll turn around and put it in the basket. I mean, it's not what the league is anymore. Right. It's not the old days of the running backs, just give it to, just give it to Emmitt Smith. Just give it to one of these guys and let him pound the rock for 35 times. That's not what the league is. So, I still think Malik Nabers should get the most targets, but I just think play off that more. Bang, bang. Okay, now you go in a different direction. I mean, you have to throw to the tight end sometimes. You have to. Now, I asked Brian Dable about that this week, and he said, look, I mean, we had a plan, and he pretty much insinuated that the reason why their run game was so good is because those tight ends were in, and they played off them with certain blocking schemes and things to get the run game going. Look, if they win the game, it's a success, and you say just try that again. It was. I think that might have been scheme specific to the Commanders, so maybe we don't see that as much this week. It will be interesting. Nabers took that drop to heart. I mean, he did not delight in catching 10 passes and almost 130 yards, whatever he had. Right, his first touchdown. He talked about it. He did not. Talk about his dance and about how special it was. He was asked a lot of questions about his drop with 2 minutes to go. He took it to heart, which is good. Now, you don't want him obsessing over it where he can't function, but he talked about letting down his veteran teammates. So, look, every week is a test, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. This is a test for Malik Nabers coming off a game where he did so much good, and the last thing that came out of it was a drop. So, right? You'll be fascinated to watch, right? How does he respond? Yep. This is the best reality TV. How does he respond to this? Well, probably well. We'll see.
Coming out of week 1, it was Daniel Jones' mental toughness. How was he going to respond? Absolutely. This time it's Malik Nabers. Another next-gen stat for you guys. Through 2 weeks, 4 receivers have accounted for over half of their team's share of air yards. Calvin Ridley with the Titans, Malik Nabers, Devontae Adams, and then George Pickens. What's the first 2, Paul, with Ridley and Nabers? Both those teams are 0-2. Raiders, Steelers are 1-1. Ball distribution is key. Really quick before we throw to know your enemy, bigger drop, in week 2? Malik Nabers or Saquon Barkley's?
Saquon Barkley's. Malik Nabers drops it, right? That puts if he catches it, the Giants are around the 15-yard line. The game is tied. We've already established they're not going to go for a field goal. So the chances are pretty good that they're going to score a touchdown. But Saquon Barkley, I mean, God bless him. You know, it's his second game. It's his first home game. Nick Sirianni got roasted for not running the ball to Saquon Barkley there and running more clock, which is probably the more prudent thing to do. But you got to pick up your coach, man. That is a perfect play call, I think. You know, the ball is thrown there. You know, it's right in his hands. It's a dump off, basically. It's an easy first down, and he just dropped it. So if he catches that, they win the game. So that's a bigger drop.
I just tried to stir the pot a little bit right there, see if we can get some Giants fans up in the comments on that one. All right, we gave you guys some next-gen stats. You've heard our 2 cents. Now it's time to talk about the game from the other side. Cleveland.com Browns reporter Ashley Bastock joins us in this Week 3. Know your enemy. Cleveland.com Browns reporter Ashley Bastock joins us in this Week 3. Know your enemy. The first time we've had 2 beat reporters on Blue Rush simultaneously. I feel special. Ashley, thanks for joining us. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate the invite. I think there's some interesting storylines to talk about in this one. So excited to get going with you both.
I guess we can kick this thing off talking about the injury report from you guys' side of things. We heard that Myles Garrett may be limited and David Njoku may be out. Put some smiles on some Giants fans' faces, please, with your injury report.
Yeah, well, let's start with David Njoku because I think he's the one where there's some more clarity on his current situation. He injured his ankle in that Cowboys game. He was actually a victim of an uncalled hip drop tackle, which we kind of saw, I think, plague the NFL throughout week 1. That's supposed to be something they're emphasizing this year. Wasn't called. He's injured. Kevin Stefanski said yesterday he is unlikely to play. We did see him in the locker room. He did not practice. So I think just the nature of ankle injuries, this one's believed to be a high ankle sprain. He's also been sick on top of that high ankle sprain. We know that because receiver Amari Cooper actually mentioned that to us last week. So he's unlikely to play. Now, Myles Garrett has been dealing with exactly what that is, but we do know it's been bothering him since the Cowboys game in week 1. So he played through that in Cleveland's 18-13 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. He played about 60% of their snaps. So he was still the D lineman that was out there the most. But important to note with this Browns defense, Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, rotates their D linemen about 8 to 9 guys deep. So it's even hard to tell if this injury is something that's impacting the number of snaps he'd play because he'd be rotating out anyway.
Yeah, Ashley, as a fellow beat writer, you know, we're not fantasy football, so I know people always ask you, the quarterback, the running back, the receivers, you know, we got to get down to the trenches a little bit because, you know, the Browns' 2 starting tackles have not played yet this year, right? So you got Jack Conklin, you have Jedrick Wills. What is their status? Like Brandon said earlier, you know, put some smiles on the Giants' faces. Look, the Giants are 0-2. They need a lot of help. So if you want to get some Giants followers among Giants fans on your social media, you need to come out and say their tackles aren't playing and the Giants should have a field day. I have a feeling you're probably not going to say exactly that, right?
Yeah, I think your feeling is right on that one, Phil. But, I mean, there might still be some good news for Giants fans. I know that your guys' readership, your listeners, watchers, everyone wants to get that pass rush going, right? I mean, just on paper, I think it's probably shocking that they haven't gotten going yet. And I think there might be some room against the Browns O-line to do it a little bit. Now, things are still very much in flux. As you said, Jedrick Wills Jr., their typical starter on the left side, has not played yet this year. Jack Conklin, their all-pro on the right side, has not played yet this year. But bad news potentially for the Giants might be that Jack Conklin was a full participant during practice yesterday for the first time all year. He's a veteran, so he was a left tackle in college at Michigan State. So if they had to, they could move him over to the left side. Now, the Brown situation is unique because we say their 2 starting tackles haven't played yet. But DeJuan Jones has played, and DeJuan Jones, I think at this point in his career, he's entering year 2. He's basically a starter. He started after Jack Conklin went down, and all 3 of these guys had season-ending knee injuries last year. So he replaced Jack Conklin. His knee injury wasn't until early in December last year. So he has a lot of starting experience, but now he's getting banged up. He didn't practice yesterday because the knee he had surgery on was sore. He told me, though, in the locker room that he fully expects to play in this game. So it sounds like we've heard players say things like that before and not play, but it sounds like he's at least trending in the right direction. I would say Jack Conklin potentially trending in the right direction, but I do think if Jack Conklin plays, they might kind of platoon these tackles a little bit. The other guy on the left side is James Hudson III. He's in his 4th year. He's struggled. He has a really bad pass blocker rating on PFF right now, only like 41.8, I believe. So definitely room. Giants edge rusher after Deshaun Watson in this game.
Yeah, we talked about the Browns' offensive line. I got a next-gen stat here where they've allowed pressure on 40.4% of Deshaun Watson's dropbacks, and he's been sacked 8 times, which is 4th most amongst quarterbacks in the NFL. I know it's only week 2, but we're talking about a guy. Well, first and foremost, I know I'm talking with beat writers and reporters when we start off with offensive line and not quarterback. But let's talk about the Browns' quarterback, Deshaun Watson. Do you feel like he's getting his juice back, Ashley?
You know, maybe a little bit. I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, the sack numbers, what's interesting about Deshaun Watson is, like, this has always kind of been the player he is. He's a quarterback that's going to hold on to the ball longer. So while in week 1 against the Cowboys, I definitely think there were protection issues. In general, that's just kind of life with Deshaun Watson as your starting quarterback. You're going to take some sacks. And now in the Jaguars game, he didn't take the 1 sack he should have on 3rd and 6 in the 4th quarter when they were trying to run down the clock, and it nearly cost them the game. But I do think it's interesting to kind of see them in that Jaguars game. The way I think they got their group back was going to the run earlier. They got Dante Foreman involved. He's a vet at this point, but it's his 1st year here. And he had no touches in their season opening loss to the Cowboys. So I do think getting him and Jerome Ford going early is key to helping Deshaun, because that in turn opened up the pass game. I think the other storyline to be aware of is Deshaun Watson just hasn't found chemistry yet with Amari Cooper. I mean, Amari Cooper is a true number 1 wide receiver. I forget how many catches he ended up with on Sunday, but I do remember he was 0 for 4 on targets. And in each game, he's had dropped passes that would have been good for touchdowns this season. So tough break for those two. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, though, in this game.
Paul?
Yeah, actually, I have another insider beat writer question because, Deshaun Watson, the allegations, there were more allegations that came out this year. So what is the tenor and tone in his press conferences? Is it brought up and then does he have a statement? Is it like, don't ask him? He's been through this a lot, right? Last year, a lot, and this year it's up again. So how is that dynamic with the media and the quarterback?
Yeah, I think more so it was really the story going into the Jaguars game last week. Those allegations, this newest civil suit, which is different than the other civil suits he's faced in the sense that this was a woman he went on a date with. All the other ones were sexual misconduct allegations in massage appointments. So that's still ongoing. The victim's attorney, Tony Busby, said she is due to speak with the NFL, who is investigating this. He said last week in 2 weeks, so 1 week from now sometime, she is supposed to speak to the NFL in their investigation. But as far as the press conferences, that was really the main focus of his press conference, his weekly press conference last Wednesday. Not so much this Wednesday, but in that press conference last Wednesday, he said he is innocent. He strongly denied these latest allegations, which has kind of been the trend for him as each one of these civil suits has popped up. And during his time in Cleveland, it's either a strong denial or a no comment, because that's what my legal team said to do from his side. So I will say it was interesting last week, and this is where I can just tell this is like a Kevin Stefanski football team at this point, because every other player that we've asked about Deshaun, whether this has the potential to become a distraction or players turning on Deshaun, so to speak, they've all said, nope, that's not the case. Like, we're focused on the game. This is a football team. People always have things happening off the field. So it's been interesting to kind of see that dynamic, because the Browns, like 5 or 7 years ago, like, I don't think they'd be able to handle this kind of scrutiny. But there's some stability in Cleveland now with Kevin Stefanski in that head coaching role.
And the players are always going to try and show some sort of united front. You never want that type of news to affect the locker room. But in terms of the player, I feel like it's affecting them. You get every question you get asked is going to be about these allegations, probably for the rest of your career. You look at the Chiefs bringing back Kareem Hunt. Andy Reid had to come out and say, oh, we did our due diligence on him. We did background checks on him from after that matter when they had to release him. So for Deshaun Watson, there's only one way to kind of, I don't want to say only one way, but to kind of lessen the heat that's on you is you have to play well. And he hasn't been playing well, and that's making people come out and continue to ask questions. Actually, we got our quarterback that's all throughout the media and all, but for different reasons. Daniel Jones had a solid game last week against the Commanders. How does the sports media in Cleveland and some of the players for the Browns feel about Daniel Jones coming into Cleveland Brown Stadium on Sunday?
Yeah, well, we actually haven't had a chance to talk to many of our defensive players yet. The way the Browns do their media schedule, players are available to us Wednesday through Friday. And as we're recording this, I'm getting ready to head to the team facility to talk to more defensive players today. We won't hear from Myles Garrett until Friday afternoon either, so he's obviously the main guy that we're going to want to ask about Daniel Jones. But I do think looking at this defense, looking at this Browns defense, what they've struggled with, I certainly see some opportunities there. But you have Myles Garrett banged up. And the other problem is you have Denzel Ward, their Pro Bowl cornerback, banged up with a shoulder injury right now. So I think that's a tough break for the secondary. He was limited to only 11 snaps against the Jaguars. Now, he played 11 really good snaps, and he was on a pitch count, so they knew what they were getting going into that game. But certainly, I think you look at the number of interceptions Daniel Jones has, the number of times he's been sacked so far this season. There's certainly, I think, openings for this Browns defense to make some game-changing plays. And they've struggled to take the ball away so far this season, so I think we're going to hear more about that from them in not just this week, but the coming weeks, quite honestly.
Paul?
You just mentioned Denzel Ward. Obviously Malik Nabers is the story in New York. He's really good. I don't know how long you've been doing this. Not as long as me. I know that. 18 targets for Malik Nabers, right? 18 targets in one game. This is not Jerry Rice or Randy Moss. That is a lot of targets. Caught 10 passes, had a touchdown. He was terrific. Had a drop at the end that was really, really maybe the difference in them winning the game. Maybe he was exhausted from all those targets. So would that be Denzel Ward? Would he shadow Nabers? Would they, have maybe a safety over the top? With Jim Schwartz, what does he usually do when there is one top receiver? Because there's no question right now, Malik Nabers is the one top receiver on the Giants.
Yeah, now we did hear from Denzel Ward on Wednesday, and I did get a chance to ask him about Malik Nabers, because I certainly think this is potentially the matchup of the game, especially if Denzel Ward is going to be able to play more snaps. So Jim Schwartz and his defense, he does tend to stick with man for the most part. You might see that safety shadow. I'll be curious to see if they're going to use Grant Delpit like that. He's really come into his own the last 2 years since Jim Schwartz has been the defensive coordinator here. But I definitely think he's the assignment. And it's interesting because the Browns also had a somewhat similar assignment last week against the Jaguars with mixed results against Brian Thomas Jr., another strong rookie out of LSU. Now, he's a bit bigger than Malik Nabers. He's 6'4". So that matchup, I think, was a little bit different. But some mixed results there. They didn't allow him many catches, but he still had the big 66-yard play that was one of the Jaguars' plays of the game. He ended with 94 yards. So I think this defense is going to be looking for some redemption, and I think it's going to be heavily one-on-one matchup based. Like this defense, they really trust their corners, whether it's Denzel Ward or Martin Emerson in particular on the outside. And Martin Emerson's a big guy. He's like 6'2", 6'3", very physical. He's in his third year now, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some matchups against Malik Nabers as well.
Yeah, Ward Nabers is the main event, but Emerson, Robinson, or Newsome, Slayton is the undercard. With all that man-to-man that Jim Schwartz plays and gets pressure with his front four and his defensive line, there are matchups for Daniel Jones and these Giants wide receivers to win against some of the other corners out there. And I think that that's something that Brian Daboll is going to have to do, is take advantage of that. Who else can we – how can we use Nabers to open up the offense for everyone else? Paul, you got one more before we get Ashley's final thoughts?
Sure. As in New York, we're New York Giants centric. The Giants the Giants looked at their schedule at the start of the year, and it was Minnesota at home, at Washington, and then at Cleveland, right? So the feeling was the Giants are not a very strong team, but they could probably win two of those first three games. The Vikings were not considered to be a strong team. The Giants had them in the home opener. All of a sudden, Sam Darnold's, looks like a credible quarterback. The Commanders are not a good team with a rookie quarterback, and then they become the first team in history to score 3 touchdowns and not give up a touchdown and lose the game. Ashley, I'm sure you've been in a lot of games where it's like, boy, how did that happen? This is one of those games where, I would have to sit down and talk to you and say, okay, this is how it happened. This is how incredible it was. The Giants literally didn't have a kicker who could kick extra points and field goals. So, that was bizarre. So from the Browns' point of view, I'm sure at home they're looking at this game and saying, the Giants are 0-2. I'm sure they're respecting them, respect all, fear none, all that stuff. But I'm sure these players feel this is a home game. We will take care of business and win. Is that correct?
I think that's probably a fair assessment. And I think you're right on the money, Paul, in that the Browns are going to say all the right things about this game, right? They're not going to want to give the Giants any bulletin board material. But we were talking in the media room yesterday, even though the Giants are 0-2, there's certainly some things which we've been talking about that I think there's a chance for them to exploit, particularly with the way Deshaun Watson has struggled to get the ball out quickly, knowing that the Browns have issues at tackle, and knowing that their 2 top defenders are dealing with nagging injuries right now. So I definitely think this is a prime example of, even though the Browns are the better team on paper, they have the better record. It's tough to just come in and expect you're going to win just because you're at home, just because the Giants are 0-2. Brian Daboll obviously has a history here in Cleveland. I'm sure he's going to want to come in here and get the win, not just to avoid that 0-3 mark. But yeah, I think they are going to have to come out on Sunday and show, hey, we're not just looking past the Giants and looking, oh, we have the Raiders next. What's it going to be like when we go to Vegas? So definitely an important note, I think, going into this game. It might not be everything that it seems on paper.
All right, potential trap game. Absolutely love it. I guess that could have been the final thought right there. That was perfect,
yeah.
Ashley. You got a lot of new Giants fans. You got a lot of new fans from Giants fans. So go ahead and tell the people where they can find you on social.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ashley Bastock 42, and our podcast is the Orange and Brown Talk podcast that I host with my colleagues Mary Kay Cabot, who's a legend in this business, and Dan Lobby. So you can go check that out as well for a lot of the similar conversations we've been talking about. I think there's some things that Giants fans might like on there from the one we recorded yesterday.
Well, thanks for joining us. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you, Ashley, for that. Paul, we got ourselves a battle of the quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson cannot get his juice, but I want to ask you from the media standpoint, who do you think has more pressure this game to not only perform well, but to win, Deshaun Watson or Daniel Jones?
Well, financially wise, Deshaun Watson's on a $250 million contract or more? All guaranteed. So, pressure is pressure, right? Look, it's Daniel Jones. Look, I cover the Giants, so maybe it's Deshaun Watson if you cover the Browns, but it's Daniel Jones. Awful first game, much better second game. Not crazy, but a winning performance that did not produce a win. So now it's the road, it's the dog pound. There's just pressure on Daniel Jones. There is, he has to play well for an extended period of time to have any measure of fan base. Put it this way, look, if he plays well, if the Giants win, then Thursday night, maybe Daniel Jones doesn't get booed until the second 3 and out instead of the first incomplete pass. That's what pressure is. Yeah. Really? Right?
You had me like, thinking that, the Giants fans were going to give him a standing ovation. He was like, oh, no, the second 3 and out, not the first one. All right, Paul. It's time for your final thoughts, man. Bring us home. What should we expect? Just give it to us. Give it to us straight, no chaser.
Yeah, I talked to the pretty good inside linebacker who played, who was filling in with alongside Bobby Okereke, Mike McFadden, and just about what this team needs at 0-2 as far as, and he said wins bring juice. Wins bring juice. And that's true. The Giants are parched. There's no juice there. And he said not only for the team, but for these young players to get a win. He said, you know what? It becomes almost selfish in a way and personal where, we have a close team. We want to celebrate in the locker room after a game that we've won. Right? I mean, Brandon, you were in locker rooms, yeah. Right? That, there's nothing better, right? There's nothing better, probably on the road more so, right? There's nothing better than walking off a field. The building is maybe, 3/4 empty or half empty because you've just beaten them. Some people are yelling, you suck. There's a few Giants fans there who are, cheering for you. And you walk through that tunnel into the visiting locker room and you've won the game, right? There's nothing, I'm sure, I'm not an athlete, so I don't have that. But you know what that feels like for those 5 minutes. It's pretty fleeting, right? Those 5-10 minutes there where the coach calls you up and you've just won a game and he's giving out game balls. You've won a game, in the enemy's lair, right? And Micah McFadden said, we need that. We need to celebrate something together. So that is the key this week. They have to be hungry enough. You don't get that. You have to deserve it and then you go attain it. Do something where we can celebrate, because Yep. Quite frankly, every game you come off the field and your head's down and the coach is saying how, all right, we did some good things. We got to get better, blah, blah, blah. That's hard. That's hard. And this is the 4th youngest team in the league. It's harder on them. So do something to make you feel good after the game. That's what they need to do this weekend. Yeah, it's great for the players, but I'm thinking it's going to be even better for the coaching staff. Just think, there's 2 viral moments. Great viral moments with Brian Daboll. It's the dance after the Tennessee Titans win week 1 last year. And then when I videoed him coming off the field in London in 2022 when they had beat the Packers out in the UK. 2 moments. You want to see him dancing again. You want to see him lighting up a cigar. You want to see him playing juicy in the locker room. That's what it's all about. And then that can revitalize and re-energize an entire fan base. And for, like you said, you want to see all blue, the right blue, in the stadium on next Thursday against the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football. So it's going to be an interesting one, Sunday at 1 p.m. at Cleveland Brown Stadium, 1 p.m. Eastern, that is. But thank you guys for watching the Blue Rush preview show, and special thanks to Ashley Bastock, Next Gen Stats, and, of course, our Blue Rush team for making this thing happen. Make sure you guys are on the lookout for the link to our New York Post Sports live stream after the game for our instant reaction. You got to follow New York Post Sports on all your socials to stay in the know. For Paul Schwartz, I'm Brendan London. Thanks for watching the Blue Rush Preview Show.